The metal floor was cold against Kang Day's back as he lay in the holding cell. The ship had stopped shaking hours ago, which meant they had arrived somewhere. He could hear the other prisoners crying in different languages he didn't understand. Some made clicking sounds, others howled like wounded animals. Kang Day sat up slowly and looked around the dark room. There were maybe 30 other beings packed into the small space. Most of them were smaller than him, with strange skin colors and too many eyes. A few looked almost human, but had fur or scales instead of skin. They all smelled afraid. "Are you okay?" a soft voice asked beside him. He turned to see Yoon Hana, the medical officer from his engineering team. Her face was dirty and her uniform was torn, but she looked unhurt. She had been checking on the other prisoners since they were captured 3 days ago. "I'm fine," Kang Day said. "Any word from the others?" Hana pointed to the far corner where 3 more humans sat together. Lee Taiho, their security chief, was talking quietly to Choi Minji, their pilot. Next to them sat Park Jimin, a scientist they had picked up from the research station before everything went wrong. "That's everyone," Hana said. 5 humans out of about 200 prisoners total. The ship they had been traveling on was supposed to be safe. It was a passenger vessel moving through peaceful space. Then the pirates came, but these weren't normal pirates who wanted money or cargo. They wanted live prisoners. The door to their cell suddenly opened with a loud bang. Bright lights flooded in, making everyone cover their eyes. Large figures in dark armor walked in. They were tall, maybe 8 feet, with broad shoulders and long arms. Their faces were hidden behind metal masks that glowed red where the eyes should be. "Move," one of them said in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "All of you, move now." The prisoners stumbled to their feet. Some of the smaller aliens fell down and had to be helped up. The armored figures pushed them forward with long sticks that sparked with electricity. Anyone who moved too slowly got shocked. They were herded through long metal hallways. The walls were covered with strange symbols and pictures of creatures being torn apart. Kang Day noticed that many of the pictures showed the same tall, armored beings standing over piles of dead bodies. "What are those things?" Choi Minji whispered as they walked. "I don't know," Kang Day replied. "But they're not human." They walked for what felt like hours. The hallways got wider and the ceiling got higher. Finally, they reached a massive door that was at least 20 feet tall. It opened slowly, and sound hit them like a wall, roaring, cheering, screaming. They were pushed through the door and found themselves in the biggest room any of them had ever seen. It was circular, with walls that went up so high they disappeared into darkness. Around the walls were thousands of seats filled with creatures of every shape and size imaginable. Some had wings, some had tentacles, some looked like walking trees, and they were all watching the center of the room where the prisoners now stood. The floor beneath their feet was made of some kind of dark metal. It was covered with stains that looked suspiciously like old blood. In the air above them, floating screens showed their faces to the crowd. Numbers appeared next to each prisoner. The crowd got louder when certain numbers showed up. "They're betting on us," Lee Taeho said quietly. He had been in the military before joining their crew. "This is some kind of arena." As if to confirm his words, a booming voice filled the air. It spoke in a language none of them understood, but the meaning was clear from the crowd's reaction. The betting was ending. The show was about to begin. A new door opened on the far side of the arena. This one was smaller, but somehow more frightening. Nothing came out at first. The crowd fell quiet, waiting. Then it appeared. The creature that walked into the arena was like the guards but bigger and more decorated. Its armor was covered with symbols and what looked like trophies. Bones and teeth hung from its belt. Its mask was more elaborate, with red lights that moved back and forth like scanning beams. It moved with the confidence of something that had never lost a fight. In its right hand, it carried a weapon that looked like a cross between a sword and a spear. The blade was at least 4 feet long and glowed with a faint blue light. The creature stopped in the center of the arena and looked around at the prisoners. Its head moved slowly, the red lights in its mask scanning each one. The prisoners backed away, clustering together in fear. Kang Day noticed something strange. When the creature's scanning lights passed over the other aliens, they beeped once and moved on. But when they reached the humans, something different happened. The beeping got faster. The lights flickered. The creature's head stopped moving and tilted slightly like it was confused. The creature took a step toward the humans. Then another. The red lights in its mask were focused directly on Kang Day now. The scanning sounds got louder and more urgent. "What's it doing?" Hana whispered. "I don't know," Kang Day said, but he didn't look away from the creature. Something told him that looking away would be a mistake. The creature stopped about 10 feet away from them. Its mask was making sounds none of them had heard before. Not scanning beeps, but something that sounded almost like confusion, fear. Around them, the crowd was getting restless. They had come to see a hunt, and the hunter was just standing there, staring at 5 small creatures that should have been running in terror. The creature slowly raised its weapon. The blade hummed with energy. The crowd cheered, thinking the show was finally starting, but the creature didn't attack. It stood there, weapon raised, red lights flashing frantically in its mask. Kang Day felt something strange happening. The other prisoners were running now, scattering around the arena in panic. But he and the other humans stayed where they were, not because they weren't afraid, but because running felt wrong somehow. He looked at the creature's weapon and found himself thinking about its balance, its reach, how fast the creature could swing it. He looked at the creature's stance and noticed which leg bore more weight, which direction it would likely move first. These weren't the thoughts of prey. These were the thoughts of something else entirely. The creature seemed to sense this. Its weapon lowered slightly. The red lights in its mask stopped scanning and focused on Kang Day's eyes. For a long moment, predator and prey stared at each other across the blood-stained arena floor. But somewhere in that stare, both began to wonder which was which. The crowd's cheering faded to confused murmurs. The hunt was about to begin, but not the way anyone expected. The arena fell silent, except for the sound of running feet as the other prisoners scattered. Some climbed the walls trying to escape. Others hid behind the few pieces of broken metal scattered around the floor. A small blue creature with many legs curled up into a ball and started making a high-pitched whining sound. But the humans didn't run. Kang Day kept his eyes locked on the tall creature's mask. The red lights inside were flashing faster now, making patterns he had never seen before. The creature's head tilted to one side, then the other, like it was trying to understand something that made no sense. The weapon in its hand started to shake slightly. "Why isn't it attacking?" Choi Minji whispered behind him. "Quiet," Lee Taeho said softly. "Don't move fast. Don't look away." Taeho had been a soldier. He knew about predators and prey. He also knew that sometimes the rules changed. Without warning, the creature took another step forward. Its scanning lights swept over Yoon Hana, then Park Jimin, then back to Kang Day. Each time the lights passed over a human, they made a sound like broken electronics. In the crowd above, someone started shouting. The words were in the same language as the announcer, but the tone was angry. Other voices joined in. The betting screens around the arena started flashing warning symbols. The creature's mask turned toward the crowd for a moment. When it looked back at the humans, something had changed. The red lights were dimmer now, and they moved more slowly. The weapon was still raised, but not as high. "It's afraid," Hana said quietly. "Look at how it's standing." She was right. The creature's confident pose from before was gone. Now it stood with its weight on both feet, ready to move in any direction. Its free hand was close to what looked like other weapons on its belt. This was not the stance of a hunter facing prey. This was the stance of something that had found an unexpected threat. The creature started making sounds that weren't coming from its mask's speakers. They were coming from its throat. Low, rumbling sounds that seemed to vibrate through the arena floor. "Is it talking to itself?" Park Jimin asked. "Or remembering something," Kang Dae said. Above them, the crowd was getting louder. Many of the watchers were leaving their seats, pushing toward the exits. Others were pointing at the humans and making gestures that looked like warnings. But some stayed. These creatures leaned forward in their seats, watching with what looked like fascination and terror. The tall creature suddenly lowered its weapon completely. It reached up and touched the side of its mask with one finger. The red scanning lights changed to a softer blue color. The mask made new sounds, quieter ones. Images started appearing on the arena's floating screens. Not betting numbers this time, but pictures. Old pictures. The first image showed a planet covered in green and blue, peaceful looking. The crowd made appreciative sounds. The second image showed the same planet, but different. The green was mostly gone, replaced by brown and gray. Smoke rose from many spots on the surface. The third image made the crowd gasp. It showed creatures that looked almost exactly like humans. They were wearing primitive clothing and carrying simple tools. But there was something in their eyes, something in the way they held their heads that was unmistakably dangerous. More images flashed by. Humans hunting in groups. Humans making weapons. Humans tracking other creatures across vast distances. And in every image, the other creatures were running, always running. The tall creature in the arena was staring at these images too. Its mask was making more sounds, faster now. It sounded like it was arguing with itself. "Those are humans," Choi Minji said. "Ancient humans. But how?" The images kept coming. They showed humans spreading across different worlds. They showed other species, fleeing from human settlements. They showed empty cities where other creatures had lived before the humans arrived. But the most disturbing images came last. These showed the other species working together to do something terrible. Ships surrounded human worlds. Weapons fired from space. And when the smoke cleared, the human worlds were gone. All of them. The crowd in the arena was almost completely quiet now. Many seats were empty. Those who remained looked terrified. The tall creature suddenly straightened up. It looked at the humans again, but this time its stance was different. Not afraid, but respectful. It slowly placed its weapon on the ground and took a step back. The gesture was clear in any language. "I am not your enemy." "What do we do?" Hana whispered. Kang Dae thought about the images they had just seen. Ancient humans who had been wiped out by other species working together. But if that was true, then how were they here now? He took a step forward, away from the other humans. The creature's mask focused on him immediately. The blue lights flickered. Kang Day held up both hands, palms out, showing he had no weapons. Then he pointed to himself and said, "Human." The creature made a sound that might have been recognition. It pointed to itself and said something in its own language. The translation appeared on the floating screens. Vorthak Hunter Prime Gorvex. Then Gorvex did something that shocked everyone in the arena. He knelt. Not a full kneel, but a partial one. A gesture of acknowledgement between equals. In the crowd, the remaining watchers were silent. Many were backing toward the exits, but they couldn't seem to look away. Kang Day understood what was happening. The images had reminded Gorvex's people of something they had tried to forget. Something about humans that made them dangerous enough to wipe out completely. But humans hadn't been wiped out. They were here. And that meant the galaxy's greatest fear was standing in front of its greatest hunter. "We're not extinct," Kang Day said to Gorvex, not knowing if the creature could understand him. Gorvex's mask translated his words for the crowd. When they heard them, half of the remaining watchers ran for the exits. The hunt had become something else entirely. A meeting between predators who had been separated by lies and time, and now both sides had to decide what that meant. Gorvex stood up slowly and picked up his weapon, but instead of pointing it at the humans, he turned toward the crowd. The real hunt was about to begin, but the prey had changed. It was now everyone who had tried to erase humanity from existence. The arena's massive screens flickered and went dark for a moment. When they came back online, new images appeared. These were different from before, older, more detailed, and far more disturbing. Gorvex had connected his mask to the station's main database. Information that had been buried for thousands of years was now flowing across the screens for everyone to see. The first new image showed a galaxy map. Thousands of worlds were marked in different colors: green for peaceful species, yellow for neutral ones, red for dangerous ones. But there was another color that dominated many star systems: black for the silent hunters. "Look at that," Park Jimin said, his voice full of awe and fear. "Humans weren't just on Earth. We were everywhere." The map showed human colonies, spreading across hundreds of worlds. But these weren't the small settlements the previous images had suggested. These were massive populations that controlled entire star systems. More images flashed by, showing what those ancient human civilizations had been like. Cities that stretched across continents. Ships that moved between stars like birds flying between trees. Technology that seemed both advanced and strangely primitive at the same time. But it was the next set of images that made everyone understand why the galaxy had been so desperate to forget. Hunting parties. Humans in small groups tracking creatures across alien landscapes. But these weren't ordinary hunts for food or territory. These were pursuit hunts that lasted for weeks, months, even years. Persistence hunting, Lee Taiho said quietly. They could track something until it collapsed, from exhaustion. The images showed humans following herds of alien creatures across entire continents, never attacking, never giving up, just following. Walking when the prey ran, jogging when the prey rested, always staying just far enough behind to avoid direct confrontation, until the prey couldn't run anymore. But the humans weren't just individual hunters. The images showed them working together in ways that made other species look primitive. coordinated hunts involving hundreds of humans spread across multiple worlds, communication networks that let them track prey across space itself. They had turned the entire galaxy into their hunting ground. Gorvex made a sound that his mask translated as memory pain. He was accessing information from his species' genetic memory, data that had been locked away for millennia. New images appeared, showing the Vorthak during humanity's time. They had been one of the few species that could fight humans directly. Their natural armor and weapons made them dangerous opponents. But even they had learned to avoid human space. Because humans didn't fight fair. The images showed human tactics that made Gorvex step back in what looked like fear. Traps that took years to set up. Weapons that could kill from distances so great the target never saw the hunter. And worst of all, psychological warfare that could drive entire species insane with fear. Humans had learned the languages, customs, and fears of every species they encountered. They used this knowledge not just to hunt more effectively, but to terrify their prey into making mistakes. "We were monsters," Yunhana whispered. "No," Kang Day said, still watching Gorvex's reaction. "We were what we needed to be to survive." The images shifted to show why humans had become such effective hunters. Earth, their original world, had been a nightmare of competing predators. Humans had evolved not as the strongest or fastest hunters, but as the smartest and most persistent ones. They had learned to hunt everything else on their world to extinction or submission. And when they reached the stars, they brought those skills with them. But the most disturbing revelation was yet to come. The screen showed meetings between representatives of dozens of species. The images were old and the quality was poor, but the message was clear. The galaxy's major powers had gathered to discuss the human problem. Maps appeared showing human expansion routes, predictions of where they would go next. Calculations of how long it would take them to dominate or eliminate every other intelligent species in the galaxy. The answer was less than 1,000 years. So the galaxy's species had done something unprecedented. They had stopped fighting each other and worked together for the first time in recorded history. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier was focused on a single goal, the complete extermination of humanity. The final images were the hardest to watch. Human worlds burning. Human. Ships destroyed. Human colonies wiped out one by one. The campaign had taken nearly 200 years, but it had been thorough, or so everyone had believed. Gorvex was staring at Kang Day now, his mask making rapid calculations. The screens showed what he was thinking about. If humans had survived, where had they been hiding? How had they stayed hidden for thousands of years? And most importantly, had they been planning their return? "You're wondering if we're here for revenge," Kang Day said. Gorvex's mask translated this for the crowd. The few remaining watchers looked ready to run. "We're not," Kang Day continued. "We're here because this is our galaxy, too. We never left. We just learned to be invisible." More images appeared on the screens, but these were coming from the station's current database, not the historical records. Security footage from the past few years. Humans walking through space stations, working on ships, living on colony worlds. Always. In small numbers. Always blending in. Always unnoticed. "You've been watching us for thousands of years?" a new voice said from behind the group of humans. Everyone turned to see an older human man walking out from behind one of the arena's support pillars. He was wearing simple clothes that could have belonged to any species. His face was calm, but his eyes held depths that spoke of ancient knowledge. "Yang Sung-min," he said, introducing himself to Gorvex. I'm what you might call a record keeper. Gorvex's weapon was in his hand instantly, but Yang Sung-min just smiled. I've been in that crowd up there for the last 3 days, Yang Sung-min said, pointing to the seats above. Watching, waiting, learning, just like humans have been doing everywhere. In this galaxy for the last 3,000 years, the implications hit everyone at the same time. If humans had been hiding in plain sight for thousands of years, how many were there? Where were they? What had they been planning? Nothing, Yang Sung-min said, as if reading their thoughts. We've been planning nothing except survival. But now that our existence is no longer secret, he looked up at the few remaining watchers in the crowd, then at Gorvex, then at the cameras that were broadcasting this conversation across the galaxy. Now, we have to decide what comes next. The arena's emergency lights suddenly activated, bathing everything in red. Alarms started blaring throughout the station. The few remaining spectators were now running for the exits, pushing and trampling each other in their panic to escape. But, down in the arena, a different kind of chaos was beginning. The other prisoners, the ones who had been running and hiding, started moving differently. Instead of random panic, they began forming groups and taking defensive positions. They moved with purpose now, like they had been waiting for a signal. How many of you are there? Gorvex asked Yang Sung-min through his mask's translator. Yang Sung-min smiled. Count them yourself. As if responding to his words, figures began standing up throughout the arena. They had been disguised as other species, wearing simple disguises and alien clothing. But now they revealed themselves as human. 10, 20, 30. They kept standing until there were nearly 50 humans visible in the arena alone. You've been planning this, Lee Tae-ho said, his military training making him see the tactical situation. This whole capture, the arena, getting us all in one place. It was on purpose. Yang Sung-min nodded. We've been monitoring Vorthak hunting parties for decades. When they took a ship with humans on it, we saw an opportunity, not for revenge, but for contact. Gorvex's mask was cycling through different modes, trying to scan all the humans at once. His weapon remained ready, but he made no move to attack. He was outnumbered, and everyone in the arena knew it. Contact for what? Kang Dae asked. To end the hiding, Yang Sung-min said. To stop pretending we don't exist. To find out if the galaxy can accept us as we are, or if it will try to destroy us again. The arena's screens flickered back to life, but now they showed something different. Live feeds from space stations and colonies throughout the galaxy. On each screen, humans were revealing themselves, taking off disguises, stepping out of the shadows, announcing their presence to shocked alien populations. It was happening everywhere at once. You coordinated this across the entire galaxy, Choi Minji said with amazement. We've had 3,000 years to prepare, Yang Sung-min replied. We learned to communicate without being detected. We learned to work together without being noticed. We learned to be patient. Gorvex made a sound that might have been respect or fear. His species were patient hunters, but they thought in terms of days or weeks. Humans had been planning something for thousands of years. More alarms started blaring. The arena's communication system crackled to life with panicked voices speaking in dozens of languages, station commanders demanding explanations, military leaders calling for emergency meetings, governments declaring states of alert. The galaxy was waking up to the fact that humanity had never left. What do you want? Gorvex asked directly. Yang Sung-min looked around the arena at all the humans who had revealed themselves. Each one was standing calmly, showing no fear despite being in what should have been a death trap. We want what every species wants, he said. A place to exist without fear. The right to travel and trade and live our lives. Recognition as a galactic civilization, not as monsters from ancient nightmares. And if the galaxy says no? Gorvex asked. The arena fell silent. Even the alarms seemed quieter. Yang Sungmin's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air. All around the arena, the humans moved slightly. Not threatening moves, just small adjustments in position and stance. Suddenly, Gorvex could see what Kang Day had realized earlier. These weren't random people who happened to be captured. Each human was positioned to cover certain angles, to watch specific exits, to respond to particular threats. They had turned the arena into their own tactical space. If the galaxy says no, Yang Sungmin said quietly, then we will do what we have always done. We will survive. But this time, we won't hide while we do it. Gorvex understood the threat. If humanity was forced back into the shadows, they would go back to being what they had been before. Silent hunters who could strike anywhere, anytime, without warning. But this time, they had thousands of years of knowledge about every species in the galaxy. They knew every weakness, every fear, every hiding place. You're not asking for permission, Gorvex said. You're offering a choice. Peace or war? Yang Sungmin nodded. Coexistence or conflict? The galaxy can choose, but it can't choose to ignore us anymore. The arena's screens showed the chaos spreading across the galaxy. Some species were responding with fear and aggression, mobilizing their military forces. Others were trying to negotiate or understand what was happening. A few seemed to be welcoming the news, but many species were doing something else entirely. They were evacuating their core worlds and preparing for the worst. They remember, Yunhana said, watching the evacuation footage. Even after all this time, they remember what we were capable of. What we're still capable of, Yang Sungmin corrected. But what we choose not to do. Gorvex lowered his weapon completely and attached it to his belt. The gesture was clear to everyone watching. He was not treating the humans as prey anymore. My people will want to know how many of you there are, he said. Where you live, what your capabilities are, what your intentions are. And we'll want to know the same about every species that tries to make those demands, Yang Sungmin replied. Information sharing works both ways. Around the arena, the other humans were relaxing slightly. The immediate crisis was passing. No one was shooting yet, and that was a good sign, but the real test was just beginning. The station commanders will try to contain this, Gorvex said. They'll seal the station and call for military support. Yang Sungmin smiled. They're welcome to try. As if on cue, the arena's main doors started to close. Emergency shields began deploying around the upper levels. The station was going into lockdown mode, but instead of looking worried, the humans looked pleased. You planned for this too, Kang Day realized. We planned for everything, Yang Sungmin said. We've had a very long time to think about all the possibilities. The screens flickered again, showing new images. These were from inside the station itself. Humans working in engineering sections, in security departments, in command centers. They weren't prisoners or captured infiltrators. They were crew members who had been there all along. Gorvex made a sound that his translator couldn't interpret. It might have been laughter, or it might have been the Vorthak equivalent of surrender. The humans hadn't just revealed themselves in the arena. They had revealed that they were already everywhere. The station's lockdown system started failing one by one. The emergency doors that had sealed shut began opening again. The shields around the upper levels powered down. Even the alarms stopped blaring. From the arena's screens, everyone could see what was happening throughout the station. In the engineering sections, humans were calmly shutting down the lockdown protocols. In security, they were disabling the weapon systems. In the command center, they were taking control of communications. "How long have you been planning this?" Gorvex asked, his voice showing something that might have been admiration. "Since the day we realized we weren't really extinct," Yang Sungmin replied. "About 2,000 years ago." The implications of this hit everyone at the same time. Humans hadn't just been hiding. They had been preparing, learning, positioning themselves throughout galactic society for a coordinated reveal that was happening right now on thousands of worlds. "You've been infiltrating every major civilization," Kang Day said. "Not infiltrating," Yang Sungmin corrected. "Living, working, contributing, being part of your societies while you didn't even know we existed." On the screens, more feeds showed humans revealing themselves across the galaxy. A maintenance worker on a major trade station removing her alien disguise to show human features. A cargo handler on a military base identifying himself as human to shocked commanders. A translator at a diplomatic meeting calmly announcing that she had been human all along. But what made it even more shocking was how these revelations were being received. Some aliens were panicking, but others were just surprised. These humans had been their co-workers, their neighbors, sometimes even their friends for years or decades. "The cook on my ship," Choi Minji said suddenly. "Back something. He always made food that humans could eat, but we thought he was just being nice." "Bak Hyun-woo," Yang Sungmin nodded. "Good man. Been keeping an eye on human crews for about 15 years now." The arena was becoming less like a prison and more like a meeting hall. Humans and aliens were talking to each other instead of hiding or threatening. Gorvex had put his weapon away completely and was asking Yang Sungmin questions about human capabilities and intentions. But not everyone in the galaxy was handling the news so well. The screens showed military fleets mobilizing near several major worlds. Emergency government meetings were being called. Some species were demanding that all humans be arrested immediately. "They're going to try to stop this," Lee Tae-ho observed, watching the military movements. "They're welcome to try," Yang Sungmin said calmly. "But they should understand what they're really choosing to fight." New images appeared on the screens. These showed the true scope of human presence in the galaxy. Not just individuals here and there, but entire communities that had been living hidden lives. Families that had been passing as other species for generations. Children who had grown up learning to hide their true nature from the day they could walk. "There are millions of us," Yang Sungmin said. "On every major world, in every important system, working in every critical industry. We're not visitors to your civilization. We're part of it." Gorvex was accessing his species' military databases through his mask. What he found made him very still. "You're in our command structures too," he said. "Everywhere," Yang Sungmin confirmed. "We had to be. How else could we make sure no one was planning another genocide?" The word genocide hung in the air like a physical weight. It reminded everyone of what had happened thousands of years ago, and what could happen again if fear overcame reason. "Show them," Kang Day said to Yang Sungmin. "Show them what?" "Show them what happens if they choose war." Yang Sungmin hesitated. "That might be counterproductive. They need to understand." Kang Day insisted. Not as a threat, but as a fact. They need to know what they're really choosing between. Yang Sungmin looked around the arena at all the humans and aliens who were watching. Finally, he nodded to someone in the crowd. The screens changed again. This time they showed computer simulations, models of what would happen if the galaxy's species tried to eliminate humanity again. The first simulation showed a direct military assault on known human populations. The result was limited. Most humans simply vanished before the attacks could reach them, melting back into the general population or escaping to prepared hiding places. The second simulation showed a more comprehensive approach, systematic. Searches, genetic testing, complete lockdowns of entire systems. This was more effective at finding humans, but it also caused massive disruption to galactic society. Trade stopped, communications failed, essential services collapsed. Because humans weren't just hiding among other species anymore, they were integral parts of how everything worked. The third simulation was the most disturbing. It showed what would happen if humans decided to fight back actively instead of just hiding. Transportation systems failing as human engineers sabotaged critical components. Communication networks going dark as human technicians shut down key relays. Food distribution collapsing as human agricultural workers walked away from their jobs, but the worst part was the targeted assassinations. The simulations showed how humans could eliminate key leaders, military commanders, and technical specialists with surgical precision. Not random violence, but careful removal of the people who held galactic civilization together. You could bring down everything, Gorvek said quietly. We could, Yang Sungmin agreed. But we don't want to. We want to build, not destroy. We want to be part of something larger, not rule over ruins. Then why show us this? Because you need to understand that we're not asking for charity. We're not begging for acceptance. We're offering partnership between equals. The screen showed one final simulation. This one was different from the others. It showed humans working openly alongside other species. Human innovation combining with alien knowledge. Human persistence and planning working with alien creativity and wisdom. The results were impressive. Faster technological development, more efficient resource management, better solutions to galactic problems. The simulation suggested that a galaxy that included humans openly would be stronger and more prosperous than one that excluded them. You've been holding back, Yoon Hana realized. All these years, hiding, pretending to be other species. You haven't been able to contribute everything you could? None of us have, Yang Sungmin said. Every species in this galaxy has been diminished by the lies and fear that followed the ancient war. We've all been living with a gap where humanity should have been. Gorvex was quiet for a long time, processing what he had learned. His species were hunters, but they were also pragmatic. They understood strength when they saw it. What do you need from us? He finally asked. Time, Yang Sungmin replied. Time for the galaxy to adjust to the truth. Time for fear to be replaced by understanding. Time for old wounds to heal. And if someone doesn't want to give you that time? Yang Sungmin looked around the arena one more time. At the humans who had spent their lives in hiding. At the aliens who were learning to see them as people rather than monsters. At the cameras that were broadcasting this conversation to billions of watchers across the galaxy. Then we'll remind them why we survived the first attempt to destroy us, he said quietly, and why we'll survive any others. The arena's atmosphere had changed completely. What had started as a hunt had become something like a diplomatic meeting. Humans and aliens were sitting together, talking quietly, sharing information that had been hidden for thousands of years. But Gorvex remained standing, his weapon still within easy reach. "There's something I need to understand," he said to Yang Sung-min. "My people, we are hunters. It's what we are, what we've always been. But you," he gestured to all the humans in the arena, "you're something else." "What do you mean?" Kang Day asked. Gorvex's mask displayed images of various species throughout the galaxy. Each one was marked with symbols indicating their primary characteristics. Prey species were marked with symbols showing flight or hiding behaviors. Predator species like the Vorthak were marked with hunting symbols. The humans had no symbol at all. "Every species we know can be understood in simple terms," Gorvex explained. "Prey that runs, prey that hides, prey that fights, predators that hunt alone, predators that hunt in packs, but humans—" He paused, accessing more data through his mask. "You do all of these things. You run when running is smart. You hide when hiding works. You fight when fighting is necessary. You hunt alone when the prey is small, in groups when it's large. You're not specialists. You're adaptable," Yang Sung-min finished. "We're whatever we need to be." This seemed to disturb Gorvex more than anything else they had revealed. His species understood the galaxy through the lens of predator and prey, hunter and hunted. Humans didn't fit into that understanding. "Show me," Gorvex said suddenly. "Show. You what?" "Show me what you really are. Not the simulations, not the history lessons. Show me what a human becomes when they stop hiding." Yang Sung-min looked concerned. "That might not be wise." "I need to know," Gorvex insisted. "My people will ask me to explain what humans are. I can't tell them you're prey because you're clearly not. I can't tell them you're predators like us because you're something else entirely. So show me." The arena fell silent. Even the background noise from the station systems seemed to fade away. Yang Sung-min looked at Kang Day, who nodded slowly. "Very well," Yang Sung-min said. "But remember, you asked for this." He made a gesture to the other humans around the arena. They all moved at the same time, but not in any threatening way. Instead, they began rearranging themselves into new positions. Not random positions, but carefully calculated ones that created overlapping fields of vision and movement. "Yun Hana," Yang Sung-min said. "Tell our Vorthak friend what you see when you look at him." Hana studied Gorvex for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was clinical, like she was describing a medical patient. Vorthak physiology shows several potential vulnerabilities. The armor plating has gaps at the joints that could be exploited with precise strikes. The mask contains sensitive electronics that could be disrupted by electromagnetic interference. The stance suggests the left leg bears more weight, probably due to an old injury that never healed properly. Gorvex stepped back involuntarily. He had been examined like a specimen, analyzed like prey. "Lee Taiho," Yang Sung-min continued. "Tactical assessment." Taiho's voice was matter-of-fact. "Single opponent with superior strength and reach but limited mobility due to armor weight. Standard Vorthak hunting pattern suggests preference for direct confrontation rather than indirect tactics. Environmental advantages include multiple debris fields for cover and elevation changes that could be used to negate height advantage." "Park Jimin," Yang Sung-min said. "Psychological profile." Jimin tilted his head, studying Gorvex like a puzzle. "Confidence patterns indicate extensive successful hunting experience, but recent behavioral changes suggest encounter with unfamiliar stimuli causing stress responses. Pride-based species psychology means Direct challenge would provoke aggressive response, but intellectual challenge would generate curiosity response. Gorvex's mask was cycling through different modes frantically. He was being dissected by experts who had been studying his species for years without him even knowing they existed. Choi Minji, Yang Sung-min said. Escape routes. Minji pointed to several locations around the arena without hesitation. Primary exit through the main doors, secondary through the maintenance access behind the third pillar, tertiary through the ventilation system accessible via the damaged wall section. Additionally, the arena's gravity generators could be overloaded to create temporary zero-G conditions favoring smaller, more agile opponents. Kang Dae, Yang Sung-min said finally. Integration. Kang Dae looked at all the information that had been shared, then at Gorvex. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but somehow more frightening than any of the others had been. If we wanted to neutralize this threat, we would use Minji to disable the arena's gravity while Hana targeted the joint vulnerabilities identified in her assessment. Taiho would coordinate the attack to exploit the psychological triggers Jimin identified. The entire engagement would take approximately 30 seconds. He paused. But we don't want to neutralize this threat. We want to understand it, to learn from it, to find a way for both our species to benefit from coexistence. Gorvex stood very still for a long moment. His mask had stopped cycling through different modes and was now focused entirely on the humans. You did that in less than 2 minutes, he said finally. We've been doing it our entire lives, Yang Sung-min explained. Every human in this galaxy has had to analyze every species they encounter. We've had to understand how to blend in, how to avoid suspicion, how to escape if discovered. It's not cruelty or malice. It's survival. But you could have killed me at any time during this conversation. Yes, Yang Sung-min said simply. Just as you could have killed any of us. The difference is that we chose not to. And we're hoping you'll make the same choice. Gorvex looked around the arena at all the humans. Each one was watching him calmly, showing no fear or aggression. But now he could see what Kang Dae had seen earlier. These weren't prey animals cowering before a predator. These were fellow predators choosing not to hunt. This is what the galaxy tried to destroy, Gorvex said. And it wasn't a question. This is what we became in order to survive what the galaxy tried to do to us, Yang Sung-min corrected. We weren't like this before the ancient war. We were explorers, builders, dreamers. The war taught us to be analysts, survivors, and when necessary, weapons. And now, Yang Sung-min looked around the arena one more time, at humans who had spent lifetimes pretending to be something they weren't. At the Vorthak hunter who had chosen respect over violence. At the cameras that were still broadcasting their conversation to a galaxy that was trying to decide humanity's fate. Now we're hoping we can be something else, he said. Something better. Something that builds instead of just surviving. Gorvex slowly reached for his weapon. Every human in the arena tensed slightly, but none of them moved to attack. He drew the blade and held it up so everyone could see it. Then he placed it on the ground and stepped back. I would be honored to learn what that something else might be, he said. The moment Gorvex placed his weapon on the ground, alarms started blaring throughout the station again. But these were different alarms, not emergency lockdown signals, but incoming ship alerts. The arena's screens flickered to life, showing the space around the station. Dozens of ships were arriving from different directions. Military vessels from at least 6 different species, all heavily armed and moving into attack positions. So much for diplomacy, Lee Taiho muttered. Yang Sungmin didn't look surprised. We expected this. Fear makes people do predictable things. More screens activated, showing similar scenes around other human reveal sites across the galaxy. Military buildups, emergency declarations, some governments calling for immediate strikes against any location where humans had been discovered. But the most disturbing images came from civilian areas. Panic in the streets of major cities. Alien. Families evacuating their homes. Children crying as their parents rushed them toward evacuation ships. They're terrified, Yoon Hana said, watching the footage. They should be, a new voice said from the arena's upper levels. Everyone looked up to see a figure in official station commander uniform descending toward them on an anti-gravity platform. But this wasn't the alien commander who had been running the station. This was clearly human. Kim Nari, Yang Sungmin said. I was wondering when you'd reveal yourself. Kim Nari stepped off the platform and walked toward the group. She moved, with the confident stride of someone used to command. But her face showed the strain of maintaining a false identity for years. I've been the assistant station commander here for 8 years, she announced to everyone. The real commander never made a decision without consulting me first. Half the alien policies on this station were actually human ideas. Gorvex's mask was trying to process this information. How many positions of authority do humans hold throughout the galaxy? Enough, Kim Nari replied. We learned long ago that the best place to hide is often in plain sight, especially in positions where people don't want to look too closely at your background. The screens showed more ships arriving outside the station. The military buildup was becoming a full-scale siege. They're not here to negotiate, Kang Day observed. No, Kim Nari agreed. They're here to contain what they see as a threat. And if they can't contain it... She gestured to the weapon systems that were becoming visible on the approaching ships. They'll try to destroy it, Yang Sungmin finished. Again. Gorvex picked up his weapon from the ground, but instead of threatening anyone with it, he attached it to his belt. My people are among those ships. They'll expect me to report on what I've found here. And what will you tell them? Yang Sungmin asked. Gorvex was quiet for a moment, accessing information through his mask. When he spoke, his words were carefully chosen. I will tell them that I found prey that turned out to be predators. But more than that, I found predators that chose not to hunt when they could have. He looked around the arena at all the humans who were still positioned strategically but making no aggressive moves. I will tell them that humans are dangerous, yes. But they're dangerous in the way a sleeping weapon is dangerous, only if you're foolish enough to attack it. The communication systems crackled to life. Voices in multiple languages were demanding that the station surrender all human prisoners immediately. Military commanders were giving ultimatums. Government officials were reading formal declarations. But there were other voices, too. Civilian leaders calling for calm. Scientists asking for time to study this development. Even some military officers questioning the wisdom of immediate action. The galaxy is splitting, Kim Nari observed, listening to the communications. Some want to negotiate, others want to attack immediately. Which side has more ships? Lee, Taeho asked. The screen showed the tactical situation around dozens of human reveal sites. In some places, the response was purely military. In others, diplomatic vessels were arriving alongside the warships. A few locations showed no hostile response at all. It varies, Kim Nari said, but overall the fear side seems to be winning. Yang Sungmin activated a communication device he had been carrying. When he spoke into it, his voice was broadcast simultaneously to every human reveal site across the galaxy. Implementation Protocol 7. he said simply. The response was immediate. On every screen showing human reveal sites, things began happening at once. Human workers throughout the various stations and colonies began moving with purpose, not attacking, not sabotaging, but taking control of essential systems, life support, communications, transportation, defense grids. Everything that kept galactic civilization functioning had humans embedded within its operation. And now, those humans were making their presence known. You're not threatening to destroy anything, Gorvex realized. You're showing them how much they depend on you. Exactly, Yang Sungmin said. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to be recognized as equal partners in maintaining it. The military ships outside the station were receiving new orders. Some were being told to stand down while their commanders tried to understand the scope of human integration into galactic society. Others were being ordered to attack regardless of the consequences. Some of them are going to shoot, Choi Minji said, watching the tactical displays. Yes, Kim Nari agreed. Fear will overcome reason in some cases. People will choose to risk everything rather than accept that their worldview was wrong. What happens then? Gorvex asked. Yang Sungmin's expression was sad but determined. Then we remind them why the galaxy tried to exterminate us in the first place, and why they failed. The screens showed the first shots being fired, not at the station they were on, but at a human reveal site 3 systems away. A small colony where humans had been living openly for less than 6 hours. The attack lasted exactly 37 seconds. Then every ship that had participated in the attack simply stopped. Their engines went dead, their weapons powered down, their communications fell silent. How? Gorvex asked. We've had 3,000 years to prepare for this possibility, Yang Sungmin explained. Every human working on those ships, every human in the systems that built those ships, every human involved in maintaining the networks that coordinate those fleets, they've all been waiting for a signal. The screen showed similar incidents beginning to occur throughout the galaxy. Military forces that attacked human sites found their own equipment turning against them. Not violently, not destructively, but completely and efficiently. You're not destroying their ships, Kang Day observed. You're just stopping them. We don't want to be conquerors, Yang Sungmin said. We want to be citizens, but we also want to be alive citizens. The communication channels were filling with confused and panicked voices, military commanders demanding to know why their ships weren't responding, government leaders asking their advisors to explain what was happening, scientists begging for calm while they tried to understand the situation. But slowly, other voices began to emerge. Voices calling for peaceful contact, voices suggesting that maybe, just maybe, it was time to try a different approach than the one that had failed 3,000 years ago. The galaxy is learning, Gorvex said, listening to the changing tone of the communications. The galaxy is remembering, Yang Sungmin corrected. Remembering that we used to coexist before fear took over. Kim Nari was coordinating with other, hidden human commanders across the galaxy. The demonstration of capability was having its intended effect. Military aggression was decreasing as commanders realized the futility of attacking an enemy that was already inside all their systems. So what happens now? Yoon Hana asked. Yang Sungmin looked around the arena one final time, at humans who had revealed themselves after lifetimes of hiding, at Gorvex, who had chosen understanding over violence, at the screens showing a galaxy struggling to accept a new reality. Now, he said, we find out if the galaxy has learned anything in the last 3,000 years. 6 months later, the same arena looked completely different. The bloodstains were gone, replaced by polished floors that reflected the lights of a dozen different species' communication devices. The seats that had once held spectators hungry for violence now contained diplomats, scientists, and trade representatives. Kang Day stood where he had first faced Gorvex, but now he wore the formal uniform of Earth's first official galactic ambassador. Beside him, Yoon Hana had been appointed as the head of the new interspecies medical exchange program. Her work studying alien physiology during their hiding years had made her one of the galaxy's leading experts on cross-species medicine. The Altarian delegation has agreed to the trade proposal, Lee Taiho reported, approaching from where he had been coordinating with various military liaison officers. His new role as head of Human Defense Coordination meant he spent his days helping former enemies understand human capabilities rather than hiding them. And the Zenthian response to the technology sharing initiative? Kang Day asked. Enthusiastic? Choi Minji replied from her position at the communication station. As the director of Human-Alien Cultural Integration, she had been working to establish formal diplomatic relations with over 40 different species. They're particularly interested in human long-term planning techniques. The arena's screens no longer showed betting odds or hunting footage. Instead, they displayed the progress of dozens of joint human-alien projects, agricultural colonies where human persistence farming was increasing crop yields by 300%, engineering projects where human problem-solving was helping solve construction challenges that had stumped alien engineers for decades, but the most significant changes weren't visible on any screen. How many humans have come out of hiding in the last 6 months? Yang Sung-min asked as he joined the group. He still served as the head of human historical records, helping the galaxy understand the true scope of human integration into their societies. The latest count is just over 47 million. Kim Nari replied. She had been elected as the first human representative to the Galactic Council, a position that had been created specifically to give humanity an official voice in galactic government. And we estimate we've only identified about 60% of the total population. Any problems? Kang Day asked. Some, Kim Nari admitted. There are still species and governments that refuse to acknowledge human citizenship. A few have tried to expel their human populations. But she gestured to the screens showing galactic shipping routes and trade networks. They're discovering that removing humans from their societies is more complicated than they expected. This was the unspoken reality that had made the peaceful transition possible. Humans hadn't just been hiding in galactic society, they had become essential to its function. Removing them would cause more damage than accepting them. Heavy footsteps announced Gorvex's arrival. The Vorthak hunter had become something unprecedented in his species' history, an ambassador rather than a predator. His armor now bore the symbols of his new role as the Vorthak liaison to the Human Integration Council. The council meeting is about to begin, he announced. The final vote on the Human Citizenship Accords. They made their way through corridors that had once echoed with the sounds of terrified prisoners. Now those same corridors bustled with the activity of interspecies cooperation. Human engineers worked alongside Vorthak technicians. Alien medical. Researchers collaborated with human biologists. Children of multiple species played together in areas that had once been restricted to single-species groups. The main council chamber was packed with representatives from over 200 worlds. The debate had been going on for months, with some species arguing for full human integration and others demanding continued restrictions. But the nature of the debate had changed fundamentally from the discussions 3,000 years ago. This time, no one was talking about extermination. The question wasn't whether humans had a right to exist, but what role they should play in galactic society. The vote count is close, Gorvek said quietly as they took their seats in the human delegation area. Some species are still afraid of what accepting us fully might mean, and some are afraid of what rejecting us might cost them, Kim Nari replied. Fear is still a powerful motivator, but now it's working in our favor. The Galactic Council's speaker called for the final vote. The process was lengthy, with each world's representative stating their position and reasoning. Some speeches were eloquent calls for unity and cooperation. Others were frightened warnings about the dangers of trusting humanity. But slowly, the pattern became clear. The species that had worked most closely with humans during the past 6 months were voting for full integration. Those that had maintained distance were more likely to vote for restrictions. When the final tally was announced, the human citizenship accords passed by a margin of 67%. Humanity was officially recognized as a galactic civilization, with full rights and responsibilities. The chamber erupted in a mixture of celebration and concerned murmuring. Some species delegations were already making plans for expanded cooperation with human worlds. Others were clearly planning to maintain their distance regardless of the official vote. It's not perfect, Yang Sungmin said as they left the chamber. There will still be species that refuse to work with us, governments that try to restrict, our movements, individuals who see us as threats rather than neighbors. But it's a beginning, Yun Hana added. A real beginning this time, instead of a false ending. They walked back toward the arena that had started it all. Along the way, they passed monuments that had been erected to commemorate the day humans revealed themselves to the galaxy. But the most meaningful monument wasn't made of stone or metal. It was the sight of human and alien children playing together in the station's parks. The sound of multiple species working together on common problems. The simple, everyday reality of a galaxy where humanity was no longer a hidden secret, but an acknowledged part of the community. What happens now? Kang Day asked as they reached the arena. The great space had been converted into a museum and meeting hall. Displays showed the history of human-alien relations, both the ancient conflicts and the recent reconciliation. But the centerpiece was a simple exhibit. Gorvex's weapon, the one he had placed on the ground 6 months ago, displayed alongside everyday human tools. The message was clear. Weapons could become symbols of peace when wielders chose understanding over violence. Now we do what humans have always done, Yang Sungmin said, looking around at the museum displays. We adapt. We learn. We survive. But this time, we don't have to do it alone or in secret. And if some species still choose to see us as threats? Choi Minji asked. Then we prove them wrong, Gorvek said firmly. Not through force, but through example. Through showing them that predators can choose to build rather than hunt. As they stood in the arena where everything had changed, reports came in from across the galaxy. Human-alien joint missions launching to explore new worlds. Mixed-species research teams making breakthrough discoveries. Trade agreements that would benefit both human and alien worlds. The galaxy was becoming something new. Not the human-dominated empire that ancient fears had predicted, nor the human-free paradise that some species had dreamed of. Instead, it was becoming a true community, where humanity was one voice among many, contributing their unique strengths while learning from others. The ancient war finally ended today, Yang Sung-min observed, watching the displays show the peaceful integration happening across hundreds of worlds. No, Kang Dae corrected, thinking of all the humans who had spent their lives hiding, all the aliens who had lived in fear of an ancient nightmare, and all the children who would now grow up in a galaxy where such hiding was unnecessary. Today, we finally began to heal from it. Outside the museum, ships from dozens of species traveled together through space routes that had once been restricted by fear and mistrust. And on those ships, human and alien crews worked side by side, building the future that both sides had, always needed but never dared to imagine. The predator had drawn its blade and seen the human. But instead of a hunt, they had found something better. They had found each other.